Before you scroll, do one thing. Hit subscribe because this is the kind of real American hero story you don't want to miss. This isn't fiction. It's the kind of moment that reminds us why courage still matters in this country. A 94-year-old U.S. Marine veteran survived wars. He survived the hardest years of America's history. But what broke him wasn't the battlefield. It was a slap inside a nursing home from a nurse who thought no one cared about him anymore. But she forgot a simple truth. Marines never stand alone. And when 15 bikers heard what happened, they rode not for revenge, but for respect, the kind every veteran deserves, the kind humanity should never forget. And this is how it all began. The automatic doors of Green Oaks Rehabilitation Center slid open as sunlight spilled into the lobby. Morning nurses exchanged coffee, gossip, and bored expressions. Just another Tuesday shift. In room 214 sat Arthur Miles, a 94-year-old Marine veteran from World War II and Korea. His skin was thin like worn leather, hands trembling slightly, but his eyes, sharp, fierce. The eyes of a man who had faced hell and came home. Arthur didn't talk much. Most residents didn't know his medals filled an entire shadow box his daughter kept safe. To them, he was just another old man who forgot too much and lived too long. Nurse Miller, mid-30s, brown scrubs, perfectly straight hair, and a personality dipped in vinegar, walked in. She wasn't in the mood for kindness. "You're not eating again," she snapped, slamming his tray down so hard mashed potatoes nearly flew off. Arthur flinched. Slow, confused. I'm waiting on my daughter," he whispered. "She brings real food on Tuesdays." He smiled softly. Today was Tuesday, or so he hoped. Miller rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You think you're special because you wore a uniform 80 years ago?" Arthur's hands tightened around his blanket. "I served this country," he said, voice trembling yet proud. "I know who you think you are," she muttered, stepping closer. "And guess what? No one cares anymore." She snatched his blanket, he reached for it, and her hand cracked across his cheek. A slap, hard, loud, the kind meant to break dignity. Not skin. Arthur didn't cry. Marines don't cry. But his eyes shimmered. A silent hurt deeper than war wounds. Miller leaned in. "You're a burden. Remember that?" She left as his heart pounded with the humiliation only the forgotten feel. Outside, sunlight hit chrome. 15 motorcycles rolled into the parking lot, patches shining. Guardians of Honor, Massey. Among them, Jake Bear Coleman, 48, 6'4", long beard braided with silver. A Marine veteran himself. They weren't here for trouble. They were here for Arthur, because his daughter Sarah had finally told someone what was happening. Inside the entrance, the administrator whispered nervously, "Please stay calm. Let us investigate first." Bear cut him off. Calm voice, no threat, just truth. He survived Iwo Jima. He doesn't need an investigation. He needs respect. Their boots echoed down the hallway, the kind of echo that warns evil to step back. Arthur looked up as they entered his room. Recognition glimmered. "Brotherhood awakened." "Marine Miles," Bear said, pressing 2 fingers to his brow in salute. "We heard a punk forgot who you are." Arthur blinked. Then a tiny grin. "Just another day, son." Bear saw the red mark on his cheek. He breathed in, the kind of breath before a storm. Nurse Miller peeked from the hall, froze. She realized she didn't slap an old man. She slapped a Marine with family. And the roar of engines waiting outside promised. This wasn't over. Nurse Miller stood frozen in the hallway, a paper chart clutched in her hand like a shield that suddenly felt too small. She had seen angry families before, but this was different. These men weren't yelling. They weren't threatening. They were silent. The kind of silence that demands reality to correct itself. Bear stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Arthur's frail shoulder. "You okay, sir?" he asked quietly. Arthur nodded, though his voice wobbled. "I've been hit harder," he joked. But the humor didn't reach his eyes. Bear's jaw clenched. "Not on our watch." Sarah rushed in, Arthur's daughter, still in scrubs from the hospital she worked at. Her eyes widened when she saw the mark on her father's cheek. "Oh my God, Dad." She knelt, her hands trembling as she brushed the red imprint. Arthur whispered, It's all right, sweetheart. She just forgot her manners. Sarah looked up, eyes filled with fire. She's been rough with him for weeks. Today, she crossed the line. One of the bikers, Tank, a bald giant with a deep southern drawl, spoke. She slapped a United States Marine veteran. That's not just crossing a line. That's stepping on the flag. Bear nodded slowly. Where is she? Nurse Miller tried to disappear around the corner, but another biker, Blaze, gently blocked her escape. Not touching her. Just standing, like a wall built of consequences. Ma'am, Bear said, steady and cold. We're going to have a conversation. The administrator hurried back, sweat forming under his cheap suit. We can resolve this internally. Bear turned to him. You had chances. Now we're here. Administrator swallowed hard. But please, don't escalate. Bear raised a hand. We're not here to fight. We're here to protect. He looked directly into Miller's eyes, hers shaking like a teenager caught in a lie. You ever wear that uniform? He asked, pointing at the American flag on her badge. She didn't answer. You ever lose a friend out there? Her silence hung heavy. You ever bury a brother who never came home? A biker in the back closed his eyes, remembering a funeral flag. You ever look a Gold Star mom in the eyes and promise her that we'll honor her son's sacrifice every single day he's gone? She flinched. Because the truth is loud even when spoken softly. You don't get to touch a Marine, Bear said. You don't talk down to the people who made sure you get to wake up every morning safe. Sarah wiped her tears. My dad thought he was forgotten. Arthur tried to interrupt. Sarah, no, Dad, you served everyone. Now let someone serve you. Bear placed his biker vest on the edge of Arthur's bed. The patch glinted proudly. Semper Fi. Family is forever. Arthur touched the patch gently, like reconnecting with a long-lost part of himself. He whispered, I didn't think anyone cared anymore. Bear leaned closer. Old man, listen carefully. You are never, ever alone. Arthur's eyes glistened, not from pain, but from remembrance. The administrator cleared his throat nervously. We can take disciplinary action. Bear cut him off again. Not enough. Tank pulled out his phone. We're calling the news. The VA, the State Board, the Marine Corps League. Anyone who needs to hear this. Miller's face drained white. And, Sarah added sharply, I'm pressing charges. The room felt like justice tightening around her. Bear took a breath, the storm calming. Arthur, sir. Bear said, smiling, it's lunchtime. How about a burger instead of this prison food? Arthur chuckled. A real one this time. Son, after the Corps fed me canned beans for years. I'll take anything with cheese. Tank slapped the bed frame, laughing. That's my Marine. Bear turned to Sarah. Get him ready. We're taking him out. The administrator panicked. You can't just remove a patient without... Bear stepped close enough that the administrator smelled road dust and gasoline. That's his daughter, he said, voice low like thunder. She'll sign whatever needs signing. Sarah already had the paperwork in her hands. Years working with hospitals had taught her how to fight bureaucracy. Arthur lifted his legs slowly, determined. Boys, I may need a hand. 2 bikers gently helped him into his wheelchair, respectfully like they were handling a folded flag. As they wheeled him out, sunlight washed across Arthur's face. He lifted a hand to shade his eyes. Looks brighter out here than I remember, he said. Bear pushed his chair. That's because you were shut away. Arthur looked up at the 15 motorcycles waiting. And now? He asked. Bear smiled. Now, you ride with us. Engines roared to life, a symphony of protection. People stared from windows. But none more terrified than Nurse Miller, because she finally understood. She didn't just slap a Marine. She woke the Brotherhood. And the road ahead was only beginning. Arthur hadn't left the nursing home in months, not because he couldn't, but because nobody took him anywhere. He always told Sarah he didn't want to be a burden, but a man who spent his youth defending the country should never feel like a burden. Outside, the engines rumbled loud enough to shake dust from the roof. It wasn't noise. It was honor. Tank rolled Arthur's wheelchair right up beside Bear's Harley. You ever been on a bike, Marine? Tank asked with a smirk. Arthur grinned, a flash of the young fighter he once was. Son, I taught half the boys in my platoon how to ride. Bear chuckled. and fastened a helmet gently onto Arthur's head, a matte black one with a small American flag sticker on the side. Arthur tapped it proudly. "That's my team." Bear stepped behind Arthur, locking his wheelchair onto a custom sidecar attachment they always kept ready, for veterans who wanted one last ride. "We call this the hero seat," Bear said. Arthur's eyes widened, soft but fierce. "You boys think of everything." Sarah stood there, one hand covering her mouth, trying not to cry as she recorded the moment on her phone, not for social media clout, but to show the family, the grandchildren, the world. "This is how we take care of those who took care of us." Blaze revved his engine. "Where to first, Marine?" Arthur looked around, then a small sad smile. "My wife used to love the pier at Bayside Park. I'd like to see that water again." Bear nodded. "Then that's where we go." They rolled out, a formation sharp enough to impress any military drill sergeant. Cars pulled aside, pedestrians froze, phones came out, a convoy of leather, chrome, and respect. Escorting a hero, Arthur breathed deep, ocean air, fresh and real. The sun hit his face, and for a second, he was 19 again. No cane, no hospital smell, just freedom. At the pier, the bikers formed a protective circle around his sidecar. Nobody rushed him. They moved at his pace. Sarah walked beside him as Bear rolled the chair toward the rail. Waves crashed gently. Seagulls calling, almost like his wife's laughter echoing through memory. Arthur whispered, "Martha." "I'm here." Sarah knelt beside him. "Dad?" she asked softly. Arthur kept staring at the water, as if time was playing a movie only he could see. "This is where I asked her to marry me," he murmured. "Right there, under that old lamp that used to flicker." Sarah looked. The lamp was still there. Rusty, worn, forgotten by the city, but not by Arthur. She said yes before I finished the sentence. Arthur smiled proudly. She always did speak quicker than she thought. Sarah laughed through tears. Bear quietly handed Arthur a red rose they bought on the way. Arthur held it, hands shaking like memories do. He whispered toward the ocean, "I'm still yours." The bikers looked away, not to hide their tears, but to give a Marine a moment with his love. Then Bear crouched beside him. "Marine Miles," he said respectfully, "we're here because you matter. Not because of what you did, but because of who you still are." Arthur nodded slowly. "No one saw me anymore," he confessed. "Just an old man waiting to disappear," Bear replied calmly. "Then they were blind." Arthur swallowed hard, vulnerability cracking through his voice. "You boys. Why'd you come?" Bear looked him right in the eyes. "Because we don't leave our own behind." Arthur's chest lifted, pride, relief, and something deeper, longing. As the sun dipped lower, a police cruiser rolled up beside the motorcycles. Officer Ramirez stepped out. Mid-30s, kind eyes, veteran patch on his sleeve. "You gentlemen causing trouble?" He joked lightly. Tank laughed. "Just picking up a Marine who needed some air, officer." Ramirez saluted Arthur instantly. "Semper Fi, sir." Arthur returned the salute, slower, but sharp. Ramirez looked at Bear. "You boys did a good thing today." Bear shook his head. "We just did what anyone should do." As they prepared to head back, Arthur's voice grew firm, Marine tone activated. "Before I go back," he said, "I want to talk to that nurse." Sarah blinked. "Dad, are you sure?" Arthur nodded. "I've taken punches from enemies. Can handle a conversation with ignorance," Bear smirked. "That's the Marine spirit." And with engines ready, justice wasn't behind them. It was the road ahead because Arthur wasn't returning as a forgotten man. He was returning with an army. Chad was cuffed and pushed into the back of the squad car, while the residents watched from the windows, some crying, some smiling for the first time in a long time. Justice finally walked into that building. Jax knelt beside Rick's wheelchair. "You're safe now, Marine," he said. Rick blinked hard, tears trapped behind years of silence. "I thought America forgot me," he whispered. Jax shook his head. "America never forgets its warriors. Some people just need a reminder." The bikers rolled Rick outside where dozens of motorcycles were lined up, engines rumbling like thunder. They lifted him gently into a custom sidecar wrapped in the American flag. The entire street paused. watching a hero rise again. Jax revved his bike and called out, "This is for every veteran who stood alone." Engines exploded in unison. Flags waved. People saluted. They escorted Rick straight to the beach, the ocean he loved, the freedom he fought for. As waves crashed before him, Jax placed Rick's old Marine cap on his head. Rick smiled. Proud, alive, honored. "You boys gave me my country back," he said. Jax grinned. "Nah, you gave it to us first." They saluted him. A tribute long overdue. A hero never grows too old to be respected. All it takes is someone brave enough to stand by him.